Maybe it's inevitable in the future, but certainly not acceptable, I think, at this point of time, because they have just sort of walked into power, not even taken power, and they have yet to commit to any deliverables on the things that they've actually said that they would do to be more acceptable to the international community. Now, we have seen the Taliban wanting to speak at the UNGA right now, and they have nominated Sohail Shaheen, who is a spokesperson with the Taliban, as their UN ambassador, which is quite bizarre, to be honest. If the UN does want to see a Taliban representation come and speak, then they should demand, for example, it be a woman candidate from the Taliban, because that would show a certain intent from the Taliban to the global community that they are willing to change some of their ways in which they would govern in the future. Unless that happens, I think it should not be entertained at all.
Yeah, it is fascinating, because as they keep talking about the fact women will be allowed a role, they keep on appointing men to their positions of power. They say women will eventually be appointed, but only to areas that are appropriate. Do you think they're ever going to let women properly take their place in society?
I have my doubts on that, because this whole charade of Taliban 2.0 is a marketing gimmick as far as I'm concerned. They are the Taliban from what they have been in the 90s. And if you see the Taliban sort of interim cabinet that they announced, most of the people that are part of this cabinet are those that played a significant role in the Taliban from 96 to 2001. So even the leadership has not changed. If the leadership has not changed, how do you imagine the ideology is going to change? So, there have to be a fundamental change in the Taliban thinking, and not just actions, but thinking, for it to move to a more acceptable form of being a political entity. And I don't see that thinking coming through by any of the decisions that they've taken in the recent past.
I'm interested, though, to talk about this marketing component. It feels like a PR machine is behind this group, this group of fighters, essentially. Do you think they've been getting outside advice on how to position themselves?
Look, that's been that argument has been placed forward for a couple of months now, because people were quite surprised of how good they are, let's say, on social media and on communications. It's not that hard. I mean, the world does it, so can the Taliban. You have to remember that Taliban was also quite effective in communication in the 90s when there was no internet, but they still got their point through to the people of Taliban using various sort of physical distribution of information. They used to use something called the night letters, where they would go to villages at night, post diktats on the walls, which used to be quite dreaded by the local communities and local Afghans. And they've just shifted a lot of that as the time demands. The Islamic State did the same thing a couple of years ago, and they left behind a blueprint for any sort of insurgency and terror organizations to use, and that blueprint is freely available because it's on the internet. So it's just the Taliban being with the times. I don't think there's any PR agency or anyone involved with that side.
Yeah, but they went to the zoo to project this sense of normalcy. It seemed quite absurd when at the same time they're beating up women and supposedly carrying out retribution killings.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just the zoo. They've posted of the Taliban fighters at gyms, at amusement parks. If you see the footage from the amusement park, which was released a couple of days ago, there were no women in the video at all. So if they think that they are being smart about how they are projecting their image about everything being normal, but we have to remember that their approach to this kind of imagery is for the international community. It's not for the local Afghan population, because only 10% of Afghans have internet access. They don't use the internet for these kind of purposes. So it's for the international community, and if this is their output, they're going to fail miserably in the time to come, because it reflects a completely unchanged Taliban just projecting itself using new mediums.
Yeah,
it's
not going to fool anybody. There's almost something too that they've learned from Donald Trump and other politicians, where they just deny what is happening in front of people as a way of pretending that they are something other than they are.
I mean, that's an effective strategy, right? Just because you can deny it and you have no, at this point of time, Taliban doesn't need to answer to anyone. They have control of Afghanistan. And if people don't like the denial, well, they can, they keep to their arguments. But it's also the point that the Taliban's narrative right now, even online, predominantly comes only from Kabul. We don't know what's happening in Jalalabad or Herat or Mazar-e-Sharif or Kandahar. It's what's happening in Kabul and what they want us to listen and read. So there's a very tight control on what they're doing. It may be ineffective, but it is extremely tightly controlled.
Is there a danger that the world will be sucked into this and release the money, which is really what they're after?
There is a danger to that because there is a sense of fatigue around Afghanistan. There is a sense that, if the Taliban is in power, if it was inevitable, let's just deal with them in the best ways possible. It's going to be a grave mistake if we do that now, where the Taliban has delivered absolutely nothing and they have shown no signs of changing anything from their thinking and ideological point of view. Zabiullah Mujahid, the Taliban spokesperson, yesterday said we will only talk about rights once the Taliban government is recognized. So, they're drawing their red lines, and those red lines cannot be crossed right now because they have not delivered on it.